Can you guess the constellation?
Orion's Belt. Delphinus, the dolphin. The Big Dipper. Did you know that you can use the Big Dipper to help you find the North Star called Polaris? If you follow the two stars that are at the edge of the Big Dipper, follow that in an imaginary line up into a bare spot in the north sky, you will see the North Star. Hi! Welcome to episode 2 of the Children's Fireside History Chat hosted by the Sheboygan County Historical Society and Museum. My name is Angie Hullen, and I am the Education Program Developer at the museum. And these are my helpers, my sons Jory and Adlai, and their helpers Turkey and Blue Jay.
Hi!
We have another constellation that we want to show you.
Can you guess what this constellation is?
Constellation. That was the way the stars were arranged on the first United States flag. Another way they were arranged is in a circle with 13 stars forming the circle. Have you ever seen a 13-starred flag? The first official U.S. flag, which appeared in 1777, had only 13 stars on it. I started thinking about the flag a lot this week because of what happened on Tuesday night. Do you know what happened on Tuesday night?
The Acuity flag tore off.
That's right. The big flag at Acuity tore in the wind. There was a big storm on Tuesday night, and part of the flag tore right off. So that made me curious about the flag, and I decided to do some research about the United States flag. I learned when I was researching that the very first flag resolution by the Continental Congress said this about the stars on the flag, that they should be white in a blue field representing a new constellation. Do you remember what a constellation is?
A group of starlings! Oh, wait. Starlings are birds. A group of stars.
A constellation is a group of stars. On the flag, the group of stars were an appropriate symbol because stars can be seen by all people on Earth. And every country in the world at that time was watching the United States to see how this country was going to turn out. The constellation on the United States flag has changed often as new states were added to the United States. Last week we talked about how Wisconsin became the 30th state back in 1848, 172 years ago. So the flag has changed many, many times. Our country is always changing too. When our founders wrote the Constitution of the United States in 1787,
That's over 230 years ago.
they wrote that their goal was to form a more perfect union.
More perfect. I thought something either is perfect or it isn't. I agree.
Well, that's one way to think about it. But another way to think about it is to know that even a good thing can always be made better. So, remember when we were making these stars this morning for our activity? Okay. Well, we had one that looked like this, and that was good, but we could make it even better, and it would fit our activity better if we trimmed it into a circle like the rest. So we kind of made it more perfect. When the founders formed the United States, they made rules that allowed the people of the country to always continue making the country better or more perfect. And that's a good thing because the United States wasn't perfect 230 years ago, and it isn't perfect now. If you hear about the news, you know that a lot of people are very angry right now, and they want the government to do better and make changes. In this country, we are allowed to tell leaders when we are angry, and we can tell them what things we want to change. The United States was the first modern country to allow its citizens to do that. So, do you remember last week in our children's Fireside history chat, we celebrated the birthday of Wisconsin?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was fun.
When Wisconsin became a state, the people living here voted for a constitution, which is basically a set of laws that cover the entire state. And the Wisconsin Constitution was modeled after the United States Constitution. The United States Constitution said things like, people have the right to choose their government. Okay, that was not a common idea 230 years ago. People didn't get to choose their government 230 years ago. The United States was the only place. The Wisconsin Constitution combines some of the ideas from the United States Constitution with ideas from the United States Declaration of Independence. For example, the Wisconsin Constitution says, all people are born equally free and have certain rights, and among those rights are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And to secure these rights, governments are instituted, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed, meaning the government only operates with the permission of the people. Those are some really important promises the government is making. Do you think the government always keeps its promises to all the people?
No.
No, definitely not. For instance, did you know that just 100 years ago, women throughout most of this country were not allowed to vote?
What? That's not fair.
It's not. But the neat thing about the way the laws are set up in the United States and Wisconsin, remember, it's that the government gets its power from the people. So people can tell the government when they want something to change. People,
Even kids?
yes, even kids, can talk to their town leaders, their city leaders, their county leaders, and their state leaders about things that are important to them. People can also protest when the government is doing something that they think is wrong. I was looking through some old articles in the Sheboygan Press, and I found out about a protest that people held in Sheboygan because they didn't want the government to allow a nuclear plant to be built here. This article was from 1979, about 41 years ago. About 700 people showed up, and in the end, the building was not built. Okay, so maybe their protest worked. Maybe it wouldn't have been built anyway, but they protested to tell the government they did not want that. So this is just one example of many examples I found that showed people using their power to protest, and that power is protected by the Constitution. So if you or anyone in your family has ever been to a protest, whether one of the ongoing protests right now or one that happened a long time ago, the Sheboygan County Historical Society collects objects related to protesting. protests are such an important part of our local and national history. So this year, 2020, being the 100th anniversary of the women having the right to vote, the Historical Society has an exhibit up related to the struggle for women's right to vote. And we didn't have any artifacts in our collection that fit that theme. So our coordinator of exhibits, Tamara Lang, had to create reproductions. This banner and the sash on the mannequin might look like artifacts, but they had to be created especially for this exhibit. So when you're living in an important time in history,
Which we are.
When you're living in an important time in history, think about what needs to be done to preserve that history for future generations. So, what have we learned so far? The United States of America was the first modern country to put into its Constitution the right to protest and the power of the people to change their government. Did you know that when you become an adult, you can even run for office in an election yourself?
Yes, we knew that.
Jory and Adley both knew that because I ran for office last year. I wanted to become a member of the school board. I did not win my election, but I'm glad that I could be part of the conversation about issues that I think are important. I met a lot of people, including leaders in the schools and leaders in the city of Sheboygan, and I met a ton of people who believe in voting and the power of the people in a free country. This was my campaign sign, and you can see that I put at the bottom of my sign some things that were important to me. I put students, families, and community, 3 things that are really important to me. If you were going to run for office to be a leader in your community or a lawmaker in your state, what would you put on your campaign sign? What would you want people to know that you think is important? What would you want to change or make more perfect? If you decide to make your own campaign sign, please share it with us in the comments or send it to the Historical Society in an email. We would love to see your campaign signs. One really well-known person in Wisconsin history who really wanted to see change and put in a ton of hard work to make that happen was a woman named Vel Phillips. She saw laws that weren't fair to all people, and so she set about changing them. She proposed new laws, she marched in protests, and she was even elected to many different offices in her lifetime, including the Secretary of State of Wisconsin. She used every right granted to Americans and Wisconsinites to make sure that changes happened to bring more justice and fairness to our state. Last week, we did a puzzle where we unscrambled the letters in our state motto. Do you remember what Wisconsin's state motto is?
Forward.
Forward. Forward is really another way of saying more perfect, because as we move forward into the future, we can always make our government do better. Thanks for joining us.
Bye. Bye.